So when you're in your 20s is probably the time when you're able to take the most amount of risk with something like your pension. As you get closer to retirement, what we usually want to do is separate them into short, medium and long. So what of that pension are you not going to spend till your 80s and 90s? With that, you can possibly afford to be a bit more higher risk. With the money that you're going to spend in your early retirement, it's probably volatility that's really important to you. And looking at, say, the alpha of a fund to see actually what the fund manager's adding.
Yeah, I think one way that I think people should look at the default funds is, so 90% of people in these work-based auto-enrollment schemes are in the default. And you've got, if you line up 15 million people and say you've got to create a fund that fits all of them, what kind of fund are you going to make? It's kind of like Goldilocks, isn't it? It's not going to be too hot. It's not going to be too cold. It's going to be in the middle, leaning towards colder than hotter.
Yeah.
And I think, for most people, if they actually sat down and thought, what do I want? How much risk am I comfortable with? A lot of these people will be in a stocks and shares ISA listening to this with 100% equity exposure, but then will be 70-30 in their pension because they just haven't engaged in the fund, even though that's the pot of money that has the longest time to run, so can take the most.
Yeah, and I think what's great about looking at it now is we can still just about see those COVID numbers in the graph. So we can see when it's bad, really bad, how far is it going to fall? So you can actually see the good and the bad in the graph right now.
We always, when you see on content online where people are like, stop eating avocado toast, and and it's like, you can buy a house in London, and it's almost like, piss off, it's almost insulting. But what you pointed out was, when we're talking about £9 a week, it is like that. It's not like, oh, you can get 100 grand together if you stop eating avocados. What you're saying is, find £9 extra a week and it can add a few years to your retirement. And
or if you're really nervous to do it, play that psychological game with yourself. Set up a savings account for the first 3 months and do £9 a week into it and see if you really do miss it. And then pay it in as a lump sum and start the monthly direct debit. But on the first of every month, I always do my little sort of sanity check on my money. And yesterday, I did just up my, amounts that I save into my savings, only by 20 quid here and there, just to see if it ever feels painful.
I think the scary thing for a lot of people with the pensions is once you put it away, you can't access it again. So like you said, you can put it in the savings account and if it works out, you can just dump it in if you don't miss it. But if, like me, your car is in the garage again, then you need to, you might need emergency funds, or if you have a medical emergency or something, you suddenly need a lot of money, you can't touch that pension. So I think for people in cost of living, it's a bit scary. I mean, I'm doing okay now, but if I put away this money, what if I need it? So
yeah, then maybe do half. I think you've got to always have your emergency fund first and then do your pension. But I think give it a go because you can always stop it. And I made a lady, I hope I didn't embarrass her. I felt like I embarrassed her and I hope I didn't. I did a talk a few weeks back and the lady was really nervous about putting her money in pensions, but she'd already told me earlier at the dinner that she was 53. And so I did actually remind her that pensions are no longer her long term because she could touch it in 4 years. So maybe you've put pensions in that long term box, but maybe you're in your 50s. So maybe pensions are becoming that shorter to medium term accessible pot. And we saw last year in the budget that the rules are making us want to change the pensions. I imagine people are going to want to be, rather than pensions being the last thing you spend, going to need to switch that order to pensions being one of the first things you spend in retirement.
Yeah, and I hate to break it to people, but you will get old. You know, it's going to happen. And there's a much more chance of you getting old than dying young. And what you're going to do when you get there. I think, people often say to me, oh, I don't like pensions because I can't touch the money. And I'm like, that's the point. That's the benefit, not the curse. That's the whole reason you put it in there. Because how many people will sit there and go, oh, if I'd only just tucked away a bit more money in my 20s or 30s or 40s, I'd be better off now. Yeah. Pension. Exactly. That's the way you do it because you can't get out of it.
And I used the Royal London calculator to see what's the percentage chance of me dying before retirement. And it was 2%, which initially you think that's a very low number, but actually it's a bit higher than
that. That's quite high. I was thinking that's low.
Yeah, yours would come back at like 19, mate. You're burning the candle.
19.5.
You're just melting the candle.
it just made me think of like my year group at school. There's probably 150 in my year. So 3 of those people aren't going to make it to retirement. So in one way, that shows why life cover is needed, but it also shows why we can't just sort of live, what's it called? Live young, live hard,
die fast,
whatever.
live fast, die young.
Whatever. We know what we're talking about, but we can't have that mentality. We do need the pensions and or other assets for our safety net.
This was a clip from our episode with Lisa Conway-Hughes, financial advisor. We talked about small changes you can make to make a big difference in your life. Check out the full episode right here.